wait on Al once he gets that. Okay, looks like we're good to go. So good afternoon and welcome to our second technical assistance workshop for our round 2 of the Growing Apprenticeship Non-Traditional Sectors grant opportunity here within the fiscal year 24 grant period. Ultimately, we did a round 1 of gains, which had 38 applicants. Of those 38, we had 13 recipients of the first round of funding, totaling a total of $5 million was funded in that first round. We have a little more than that for the second round, 6 million available. So we're going to get into the presentation to kind of go over this notice of grant opportunity and to give you guys some background details and some information on what's expected of your applications and what your next steps would be in order to complete your application and get started. So with that, so in March of 2018, Governor Murphy announced the development of the New Jersey Office of Apprenticeship, as well as the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. The New Jersey Office of Apprenticeship is a part of the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network, and the Office of Apprenticeship is held within the New Jersey Department of Labor. Our mission within the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network is to work closely with USDOL to serve as a one-stop shop for employers, nonprofits, secondary and post-secondary institutions interested in developing apprenticeship opportunities. Please try to keep yourselves muted just because the interference is hard to keep up with. We're also working to support new and expand on existing pre-apprenticeship and USDOL approved registered apprenticeship programs in New Jersey. We look to establish pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs in non-traditional high growth occupations or sectors. We look to better align secondary, post-secondary adult education, occupational training to meet the labor needs that are unique to New Jersey and to develop career pathways that lead to economically sustainable wages. For our participants, we look to help apprentices earn college credits, access to robust career counseling, and increase diversity and inclusion in the apprenticeship programs that exist throughout the state of New Jersey. And we look to remove economic barriers to training and upskilling through targeted investments, such as our Gains Grant that we're here to speak about today. So what is registered apprenticeship? I know this seems simple as far as a question, but I will tell you that we will get at least one application where we will be unclear whether or not the applicant is aware or understands exactly what registered apprenticeship is. So we provide you with this definition to hopefully explain some of that detail. A registered apprenticeship programs means that it's registered and approved by USDOL and provides classroom and on-the-job training in an occupation recognized as an apprenticeable trade and meets the program standards of enrollment and graduation under 29 CFR S29.6. So ultimately, a registered apprenticeship program is a program that is registered and approved by United States Department of Labor and ultimately requires you to meet requirements of industry in order to meet the needs of the participants. That would include classroom instruction, what we call related technical instruction, and on-the-job training, which would be hands-on training that they would be doing while being paid full-time employment rates. Components of a registered apprenticeship would include the employer or the industry, related technical instruction providers or the classroom learning opportunities, a sponsor, which would be those who we're going to be granting with, or the sponsor can be the employer, or it can be, we're going to show you here in a second, an intermediary, and that sponsor or that employer is going to be responsible for the on-the-job learning, the apprentice, and a progressive wage structure for skill gains that would ensure that the participants are receiving an increase in salaries as they are becoming more valuable to the company as an employee. The benefits of registered apprenticeship are for the employer. There's a reduced turnover, increased worker productivity. It builds a company's skill base. It's a pipeline of skilled workers for succession planning, and there's quality standards that are met by all of their employees before they become full-time permanent employees. Benefits for the apprentices are that they receive that hands-on career training. They get to develop relationships with those employers, increase future earning potential, and a national credential at the end once they've completed the registered apprenticeship that can be brought with them to any state within the United States. So there are a couple models for a registered apprenticeship program that exist. The first one is a traditional employer model where the employer is the sponsor. That employer sponsor would work with USDOL to get their registered apprenticeship program developed and approved, and then work with the New Jersey Office of Apprenticeship for the assistance with the Gains program and technical assistance and for any funding that we would provide through this Gains grant. That employer sponsor would also then work with an RTI provider, which would be either a secondary, post-secondary education provider, vocational technical school, trade school, online training provider, or in some cases that employer provides that training in-house. And the last part of that model would be the apprentice themselves, who would be a part of this process throughout. The other model that exists is called a workforce intermediary model. In a workforce intermediary model, they would work with multiple employers and providers of training. Sometimes they are the RTI providers, but ultimately that workforce intermediary becomes a sponsor of an occupation with USDOL, and they receive the funding through us at the Office of Apprenticeship and through their Gains grant. They would then work with an RTI provider, those same providers that we spoke about on the last page, and then multiple employers to place those participants with for the on-the-job training aspect of the grant. And then finally, the apprentice or apprentices would be a part of their model as well. So currently in New Jersey, apprenticeship, it kind of looks like this. Current figures show that we have 8,712 active apprentices in the state of New Jersey with 1,306 total registered programs in the state. New Jersey, since Governor Murphy took office in January of 2018, New Jersey's registered 695 new registered apprentices, which is over 100% statewide increase. We've hired 17,391 new apprentices, issued 8,829 new industry recognized certifications of completion, and according to data from the last quarter of 2017, total apprentices in New Jersey's increased by approximately 1,929 apprentices.
The lead teacher.
Please, once again, we'll hear your conversations. It'll be recorded forever, so try to keep yourselves muted. Which is the highest level in New Jersey since 2013, and equates to a total increase of 28% net statewide in active registered apprentices. So this is just some details, some data on registered apprenticeship, what it is, and how we've affected registered apprenticeship since enacting programs like the Gains program and create the creation of our New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. So we ask that you set a target population within the Notice of Grant Opportunity. One of those target populations that you may wish to serve are those who are DVRS qualified and approvable. It is not mandatory that you work with DVRS individuals or those who are currently disabled or have a disability, but it is a population in which you may be interested in working with. So if that's the case, we provide you with this slide and some of this information so that you know who you can reach out to within the department to gather additional information or to possibly see if there is a connection that you can make for your program. So the New Jersey Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services is a state agency that provides services to enable eligible individuals with disabilities to achieve an employment outcome consistent with their strengths, priorities, needs, abilities, and capabilities. Nobody is a DVRS qualified participant who's not capable of being employed, just so you know. It's a mandatory requirement of DVRS eligibility that they are eligible or that they're capable of employment being their outcome. The department encourages applications from organizations who focus on placing DVRS qualified individuals into registered apprenticeship programs. The DVRS business outreach team assists employers in strengthening their businesses and enhancing career opportunities for individuals with disabilities. DVRS works collaboratively with employers and labor and workforce associates to provide talent acquisition solutions for businesses. Some examples of the essential services provided by DVRS are disability awareness training, assistive technology presentations and awareness, Americans with Disability Act considerations, targeted hiring events, and many more. If you are interested in additional information about the business outreach team and the DVRS services that are provided, you can reach out to dvradmin@dol.nj.gov, and somebody from that business outreach team will be in contact with you. So I am now going to hand this over to my colleague, Al Nixon, who will speak a little bit more about the Growing Apprenticeship in Non-Traditional Sectors grant and the notice of grant opportunity specifically. Al?
Yep, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So GAINS. GAINS stands for Growing Apprenticeships in Non-Traditional Sectors, and the mission of this grant program is to increase statewide capacity for registered apprenticeship opportunities by offsetting training and educational costs for businesses, especially in high-growth industry clusters. Grant funds can be used for such items as RTI, which is related technical instruction support, OJT, on-the-job training, wage reimbursement support, program management cost, and supportive services to encourage apprentice participation. Games Gains aims to promote increased diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs by encouraging recruitment from specific populations. Those populations are DVRS qualified candidates, which we just went over, dislocated workers, women, members of a minority group, youth, post secondary students, county vocational school participants, people with disabilities, veterans, recipients of state or federally funded programs, and the re-entry population. Next slide. The GAINS program was designed to not only expand the capacity of existing registered apprenticeship programs, but to also implement the apprenticeship training model in other industry sectors that typically do not have apprenticeship programs. Registered apprenticeships have a long-standing track record in the construction and building trades and have proven to be an effective model of training. As such, we hope other industries will see the benefits of these programs and adopt the apprenticeship model. With that in mind, there are a number of high growth industry sectors in which we are hoping to expand registered apprenticeships in. These sectors are advanced manufacturing, biopharma life science, energy, utilities and infrastructure, retail, hospitality and tourism, financial services insurance, transportation, logistics and distribution, information technology, cybersecurity, green jobs, renewable energy, healthcare, construction and building trades, public service, educational services, early childhood education, and other science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM related sectors. This does not mean that your proposal has to have one of these clusters, but applications in those industry sectors will be looked upon favorably. The funding for the fiscal year 24 round two is expected to be $6 million and is contingent upon the availability of funds, and the contracts are anticipated to be an 18-month period. Before we go into the funding incentives, it's important to note that if you are interested in starting a registered apprenticeship program, the very first thing you need to do would be to have a conversation with your USDOL representative, training representative. They will walk you through the process of registering your program and help you determine if registered apprenticeship is a good fit for your organization based on your needs. Once you have had that conversation and started the process of creating a program, then the GAINS grant can assist with funding. When our panel evaluates proposals, that is the first thing we look at. Has the conversation with the USDO happened, and where is the application in the registration process? So how does GAINS help with funding? The GAINS grant offers funding to offset some of the initial costs associated with starting and operating a registered apprenticeship program. Of the funding categories and options, we offer OJT, on-the-job training wage support. What this is once an apprentice is registered in your program and hired, we can reimburse up to 50% of their wages for no more than 40 hours a week for up to 52 weeks. With this incentive, the apprentice must be paid a rate no lower than $17 per hour. The maximum OJT reimbursement budget per apprentice cannot exceed $12,000. You do not have to include the OJT reimbursement into your budget, but if you do, these are the parameters for the funding. Next, we have the related technical instruction support, RTI, which is training. Again, the cost can be reimbursed once an apprentice has been registered with USDOL and hired at a wage rate no lower than $17 per hour. You can request in your budget the anticipated cost for RTI related expenses or a portion of them, depending on the needs of your business. Again, you are not required to include this incentive in your budget, but these are the parameters for the funding if you do. Some of the other stipulations of this grant focus on expanding registered apprenticeships in non-traditional occupation areas or sectors. However, your program must be from the USDOL approved list of apprenticeable occupations. We can provide you with a link to the list of approved occupations in the chat box. The reasoning behind this is that occupations from the existing lists are much quicker to receive approval from the USDOL than creating a new occupational training program with limited time in the contract. That is why we opt for this option. If you were awarded the contract, your first class of apprentices should be registered with the USDOL within the first 6 months of the anticipated 18-month contract. This should allow you enough time to finalize your approval of the program with the USDOL, recruit, and register the apprentices. Now, that being said, they do not all have to be registered within 6 months. It's your first class if you're doing several cohorts of people, apprentices, sorry. Another thing to keep in mind is that the USDOL funding is seed money. A sustainability plan is required to outline resources in place to continue your registered apprenticeship program without the support of this grant. And then lastly, when you are building your budgets, keep in mind that the maximum allowable cost per head is $12,000. That means that when all the budget items are added together and you divide by the total number of individuals that you will be serving, the result should be $12,000 or less. An example would be that a grant for $120,000 must serve at least 10 apprentices to meet that threshold.
Couple of additional pieces that I want to make sure are clear. That third bullet on the related technical instruction that speaks about front-loaded RTI not being permissible under this grant. USDOL does allow for front-loaded RTI, but Gaines does not. So if you are going to be accepting any participants as a Gaines participant, they must be hired from day one and receiving uh, income at no lower than $17 an hour in order for you to be able to utilize the Gaines funds towards related technical instruction. If you're interested in finding out what kind of occupations are already approved within the frequently asked questions document that will provide you within after this presentation, you'll find a link to USDOL's website where you can find that kind of information. And we'll also provide you with a PowerPoint slide that will provide you with the contact information for the USDOL representatives based on the counties in which they serve, so that you'll know who to reach out to at USDOL if you need to get the process started with getting a registered apprenticeship program approved. And lastly, just for clarity purposes, because sometimes there's some confusion, we do allow up to $12,000 per apprentice for on-the-job training. The problem with that is if you put $12,000 towards on-the-job training for your participants, you will not be able to charge anything extra towards the grant. All of your money will go towards on-the-job training. As Al was saying, 12,000 is the maximum allowable per participant. So that would include all aspects of your program, $12,000. So if you need to fund RTI and OJT and some admin, which we cap at 10% of our grant, make sure that you're taking that all into consideration when you're deciding whether or not this grant opportunity is appropriate for what your needs are. But ultimately, we allow for up to 12,000 per apprentice, and that is broken down as Al said. So if you know you're going to place 10 apprentices, know the maximum that you're allowed to ask for is $120,000.
Okay, so you will see throughout that
Sorry, I'm
next
trying to
slide.
get my slides to move.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you will see throughout this notice of grant opportunity various spots where we indicate greater weight will be given. These items are: develop or expand a registered apprentice opportunities for the greatest amount of individuals, demonstrate high quality RTI and OJT strategies, and provide adequate compensation for enrollees. Programs with larger enrollment or small businesses with fewer than 50 employees will be viewed favorably. DVRS qualified participants will also be viewed favorably. You can find that on pages 11 and 12 of the NGO.
Actually,
That you,
11, 13, and 14, Al. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had some changes to our NGO, everybody. So what's on the screen here is accurate.
Okay, so let me just read from the screen in. That you seek to, so that you seek to train new hires over incumbent apprentice, no, incumbent worker apprenticeship programs. Page 11. Detail the partnership with RTI providers and administer RTI, structure the OJT program, provide progressive compensation structure for apprentices, length of apprenticeship program, and successfully receives US DOL program status, page 13. Demonstrate the viability strategy to recruit apprentices in one or more of the targeted populations outlined in the NGO, page 12. Adequately address the cost structure and indicate the level of non-state funded investments, including other sources of funding, pages 14 and 15. Demonstrate reasonable RTI and OJ costs, which providing quality training at a low cost ratio per individual, page 15. And provide specific and measurable outcomes that align with the NGO and sponsor goals and objectives, page 13 and 14. Okay, next we're going to talk about the application process. Okay, if you are considering applying for the GAINS grant, here are some of the steps that need to be completed. First, make sure that you are eligible to apply for GAINS by checking on pages 9 and 10 of the NGO. There's a list of qualified entities that can apply. 2, the authorized official for your organization and other staff will be working on the grant should complete a registration in IGX. Can somebody please mute themselves? We will get more in depth with the process later on, but just know that the authorized official for purposes of this grant is the individual in your organization who has the ability to sign contracts, page 16. Your authorized official submits a letter of intent to apply for GAINS via email. We've included a sample template on page 20.
22, yes.
22, okay, of the notice of grant opportunity. This template also contains the email address where to send the letter. We ask that the letter of intent, we ask for a letter of intent because it provides our team not only the important contact information for you, but also kind of a sneak peek into what your proposal is going to consist of. After we receive the letter of intent and verify you are registered in IGX, we will approve your organization's access to IGX and the GAINS application. You will then receive an email from our team that will confirm your access, and you will also be provided a user guide to help you navigate through the application process. 2 important items that your organization should take care of right away is obtaining a tax clearance certificate and registering as a vendor with NJ Start. The tax clearance certificate is a letter obtained from the New Jersey Department of Taxation that certifies your organization has no outstanding liabilities with the state of New Jersey. This document can be requested through an electronic employer portal and sometimes can take a few days or weeks to receive. That is why we recommend completing this task early on in the application process. We've included a hyperlink for more information in this presentation, and that is addressed in page 18 and 23 of the NGO. The tax clearance, when you do receive it, if you've applied for prior grants, it is good for a 6-month period from the date on it. So I just wanted to let you know that. The second thing that we ask you to start early doing is registering with NJ Start, because that establishes a vendor account profile, which is used to determine where the grant reimbursements payments will be sent if you're awarded a grant. If you already have a New Jersey Start account, you do not need to re-register, and there's a hyperlink for New Jersey Start is also in the presentation or also in this presentation and can be found on 23 of the grant. I also want to, if you haven't used NJ Start in some time, you might want to confirm with them that your access is still available. You may need to reactivate your account.
Reactivating your account with NJ Start isn't a difficult process, but there is sometimes a need to do that. As Al said, those tax clearance certificates are good for a 6-month period, but the 6 months is up to the date of submittal of your application. So the date that our applications are due, your tax clearance certificate has to be dated within 6 months of that due date. So make sure if you think you have a tax clearance certificate already on file, that it's within 6 months of that date, that due date, that it was dated from the Division of Taxation. I will tell you, please don't wait to reach out to the Division of Taxation. They are overwhelmed almost always, and they take forever sometimes just for the silliest reasons to get you these tax clearance certificates. We actually had an applicant for one of our grants in our last round that received funding, and we had to pull the funding away from them because they weren't able to get a tax clearance certificate in place in time. So it is a requirement. It's actually a state law that we have it, and so please be clear that you get that in place. Secondarily, also, don't just register in the IGX database and expect to have access to the application. We need to get that letter of intent from you submitted, and then you'll get that email from us before you'll have access to the application. Once you get that email from us, then you'll have access. You'll also have the user guide in order to start completing your application. But those 2 steps need to be done simultaneously in order for you to be given access to the application.
And here you'll find it's a sample of the letter of intent that we actually ask you to use this format, this template, to actually cut and paste onto your letterhead for consistency between the different LOIs from different entities that are sending them in. Bill, is there anything else we want to say about this?
No, this can be found on page 22 of the Notice of Grant Opportunity. We just provide it here so that you have some understanding of what it is that we're asking for in that letter of intent.
Okay, so the proposal components. There's different pages that are associated with different components that needed to be completed in IGX. On the applicant information page, you will indicate a point of contact.
Working on it now. Done.
For purposes of the grant, provide contact information for your organization. On the counties to serve page, you will indicate which counties in New Jersey you plan to serve through this GAINS grant. On the previous funding page, you will tell us about any past grant your organization has received from the New Jersey Department of Labor within the past 3 years. On the employer sponsor page, you will indicate who the sponsor is for your program and what organizations you will partner with for the GAINS. If awarded, you will be able to continue to add partners to this page throughout your contract, but be advised that we do check each of them to make sure that they are cleared of tax liabilities as well, and we do so for each partner to provide their. I'm sorry, and we do ask that each of your partners provide their federal ID number so we can do that. The Gains deliverable page will ask you to outline the number of individuals you plan to serve and the occupations your grant will cover. As a reminder, only occupations from the USDOL, a principal occupation list, can be part of a Gains grant. We also ask on this page for you to list any targeted populations you plan to recruit from if applicable to your proposal. The next five items are documents that you will upload into IGX. The tax clearance certificate, which we've already talked about, but there's 4 additional items: the program narrative, an executive summary, the implementation plan, and the program sustainability plan. These will all discuss in greater detail in the next few slides. The budget summary and details encompasses multiple pages in IGX divided into categories. Those sections are personnel cost, non-personnel cost, RTI, which is related technical instruction cost, the OJT, on-the-job training reimbursement. Depending on your proposal and funding needs, you will add line items on those pages under the appropriate category. When you are finished, all of the figures will be displayed on the cost summary page to give you an overall cost for each category and total for each category. Please also note that administrative costs have a maximum cap of 10% of the overall grant request. This calculation will appear in the cost summary page as well. Lastly, there is a miscellaneous attachment page. This page is not required. It is reserved for any additional documentation that you may want to help strengthen your application. Okay. As mentioned, we'll look a little closer into each of the required documents for the Gains grant. The first item is the executive summary. This document should describe your plan and process, including a description of your organization, past NJDOL funding if applicable, the occupations included in your proposal. Again, they must be from the US DOL apprenticeable occupation list. The anticipated number of apprentices, the benefits of registered apprenticeship to your organization and to the apprentices, the projected career pathway, and any certifications, licenses, or college credits that the apprentice will earn. The second required document is the program narrative. This document should describe how your proposal aligns with the mission, goals, and objectives of the Gains grant and include a few different elements. First, we encourage partnerships with your local one-stop operating system. So if you have that connection, please include that information into your narrative. You should indicate the anticipated targeted populations for recruitment, including numerical projections. You should provide a statement of need that clearly illustrates the hiring need for individuals in your occupational area of focus. You should also describe the capacity and commitment of your organization as a whole to support this program, including descriptions of the resources that are available. Lastly, if you have any experience working on a similar grant or programs, please include a description of your past performance with outcome data for the most recent year. Note, the applicants with unsatisfactory performance may not be funded with fiscal 24 funding.
So basically, if you've been a past recipient of our funds and you did not have successful or satisfactory performance, it can reduce your score on your application based on that past performance being unsuccessful. So that's where we're going with that. Applicants with prior unsatisfactory performance may not be funded with FY24 funding. It's not saying they definitely won't. It's saying that they may not be funded.
Okay, the third document required is the implementation plan. This document should describe your comprehensive program plan and how that plan will be implemented over the 18-month contract period. This must include a breakdown of customer flow and an outline of case management services. Things to include are your summary of expected outcomes, meaning the timeline of your program to receive the approval from the USDOL, the number of expected apprentice hires, anticipated salary information, and your planned successes as a result of the grant. We also want you to include an outcome timeline that describes the anticipated program development benchmarks and milestones, target completion of new program registrations, and when apprentices will be hired. Here is where you will also want to mention if you have a connection to the USDOL, or if you have connected to the USDOL to start the registration process, and where specifically you are in finalizing the approval. You would also want to add there if you've already finalized it, like let us know in writing that it has been finalized. And then the final document required is a sustainability plan. The sustainability plan should describe your organization's strategy for long-term success absent the grant funding, because this grant funding is seed money to start the program to assist you. The sustainability plan will explain how you're going to keep it up. Evaluation criteria. All applications are considered new applications and will be evaluated based on quality, comprehensiveness, completeness, accuracy, and appropriateness to the NGO. This is a competitive process, and applications are reviewed by a selection committee using a pre-established set of requirements. And on
Uh,
that, I am going to pass it back to Bill.
And just for additional clarity here on this evaluation criteria, if you were a prior recipient of gains and you applied for this round of gains, you would have to serve new registered apprentices. You cannot serve the same apprentices that you've served in previous fiscal years. Um, you also you are qualified to apply with the expectation that you are going to be getting new registered apprentices hired and placed with employers or with your business if you are the employer as a registered apprentice. So just for some additional clarity. So next, we're going to go over the process for registering within the IGX database. In some cases, some of you have already registered in IGX, whether it's applying for previous grants within the Office of Apprenticeship or with other things within the New Jersey Department of Labor. But what we'll do is get into the process of applying if you're a new user, and then start showing you some of the pages once we get you registered here in a few seconds. So if you're already registered in IGX or believe you're registered in IGX, you can submit your letter of intent and we'll check and verify that that registration is active and exists within the database. If it's not there, we'll email you and tell you that you need to go in and register. If you know you're not registered within the IGX database, you need to go to https://njdol.intelligrants.com, and it'll bring you to the login page. At the bottom underneath login, you'll see a new user. Click here to register as a new user. You'll click that button and it'll pull up this registration form you see here on the right hand side. Doesn't ask for very much detail and information, but it does ask you for some. Provide all the pieces of information required here, and then in the section you see circled, you're going to enter gains, GAINS. That'll tell us what application you're looking to apply for, so it's easy for us to find you within the list. This database is used for all of our grant programs within the New Jersey Department of Labor, so you can imagine there's a lot of users going in and applying to register or registering at any specific time. Just by entering gains, it just helps us to find your registration quicker. Once you've entered all this information, you'll click register, and it'll submit that registration for approval. It does not automatically create your access to IGX. It submits your registration for approval to us. Once we get your letter of intent, that'll tell us to then go look for your registration within the database and approve it. So that's why we say those two processes have to be done simultaneously. Um, Once we get that letter of intent, we'll go into the database, look for your registration, approve it, and then we'll send you the email giving you access to the application and providing you with the user guide. Once you get that email from us telling you that your access to the application has been approved, and your registration has been approved, You'll use the username and password that you created at registering, whether it's now or in the past, enter them and click the login button. That'll bring you to a dashboard page. That dashboard page will have a section called My Opportunities. In order to find the opportunity that you're looking for, which is our Gains grant, you'll click on the Filter tab, and that'll open up your filter selections. You'll choose New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development under Provider and type the word Gains in name and click Search. Once you click search under My Opportunities, which will be right below the filter, you'll find the Growing Apprenticeship in Non-Traditional Sectors Application 2024 Round 2. You'll click on that name and that'll open the instance for you to be able to create your application. First thing that'll happen is you'll get this agree or decline box that pops up here on the left-hand side. What that's doing is telling you the grant opportunity that you're asking for access to and asking if you're sure you want to actually move forward with applying for this grant. If you're sure, you'll click agree and that'll create your application. It'll actually bring you right into your application at that point. If after agreeing you decide I don't have time to complete this whole application right now, most likely none of you will because there's a lot of information, we get it. When you log out and log back into IGX and get to that dashboard page, your application will show up under My Tasks from that point forward until you submit your application to us. You can find that by logging into the database or clicking on the home button in the top left-hand corner on any page that you're on. It'll bring you back to your dashboard, and under My Tasks, you'll see Gains Round 2 FY24, and then it'll say your organization's name and then a number at the end. You'll click on that, and that'll bring you right back into your application. You can do that at any time during the process of completing your application. But when you click on that agree, it's going to bring you right into the application, as I said. And this is what the application will look like. It'll initially bring you to a document landing page, which just gives some details about your organization. Then on the left-hand side, you'll see the Gains application forms that are listed with a check with a box next to it that are empty. As you complete the pages, a checkbox will get entered into those squares. If for some reason there's an error on a page, an exclamation point will show up in that square. If you don't need to do a page, let's say you don't need to complete a miscellaneous attachments page because it's not mandatory, or let's say you're not going to have any personnel costs, you can leave it blank. You do not have to save a blank page. But for the most part, most of these pages are mandatory. The only pages that aren't mandatory here are going to be some of the schedules within the budget. So schedule A, B, C, or D, depending on if you don't have line items that are specific to those costs, or the miscellaneous attachments page. All the other pages are required pages, so you'll have to go to them and complete them. You can do them in any order. They don't have to be done successively. And you can come back to this and update them at any time during the process of completing your application. Once you've entered all of the information that's required of the notice of grant opportunity and completed all the pages within your application, you're going to want to do two things. The first thing is to scroll down in that menu where you saw the application pages and find the tools section. Under that section, you'll find a document validation page. You'll click that, and what it'll do is validate that you don't have any errors on any of the pages that you completed. If any pages pop up, you want to open them, correct the errors, and then go back and do another document validation until there's no pages that show up under your document validation. Once you get that confirmation that everything is good and you're ready to submit, you'll scroll all the way down to the bottom for status options and click the status application submitted. That will then bring up this box that you'll have to agree that you are sure you want to submit your application. Once you click OK, your application will be submitted and it'll no longer show up in your My Tasks bin. That will mean that it's been submitted to us for review and it is now with us for the next steps of the process of seeing whether or not you're eligible for funding. If you have concern that the application was submitted accurately, you can email us at the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov email address, and we'll confirm that it's been received. But ultimately, just know if it's not near my tasks, it's with us and it's been submitted. If you click OK here, it's been submitted to us. Some important dates for you to know within the application are that by noon, March 28th, the letter of intent is due. Please don't wait until noon, March 28th to submit your letter of intent. The reason I say that is that gives you very limited time to complete your application. You'll only have a week, and that's going to make your application, one, not as good as it could have been, and two, give you less of an opportunity to provide us with the best opportunity, with your best opportunity for receiving funding. But you do have until noon, March 28th to submit that letter of intent. Applications are due by noon, April 5th. Once again, I suggest that you don't wait until noon on 5 minutes before noon on April 5th to submit your application, mainly because you never know what's going to happen with technology. Your internet could go down and that could stop you from being able to submit. So try and get your applications completed, ready for submittal as soon as you possibly can, and you can submit it at any time once the application is completed. You do not have to wait until a specific date to submit it. If for some reason you submitted it and you said, oh, I want to go back and edit and make this change, you just have to email us and we can send it back to you to make those changes. So no worries on it's not a you already submitted, you can't make any changes. We would allow you up until the deadline to make those changes and submit your application. But the absolute deadline date and time is noon, April 5th. I will say we don't anticipate providing any additional time. So because this is a competitive grant, we want to make sure that everybody's given the same opportunity at receiving these funds. So please try and make sure you get those applications in on time. We anticipate having all of our work done after the applications are submitted, which means review of all the applications, a panel, submittal of our recommendations and approval, and then our what's called notice of awards created and sent out, and um, um, our letters of determination sent out to all of our applicants within 45 days of that noon, April 5th due date. It might take a couple extra days, but ultimately the expectation is that our grants will start somewhere around June 1st. And like I said, like we said earlier, it'll be an 18-month grant period. Some contact information for us within the Office of Apprenticeship. James Manning is the Assistant Director of our Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning, and his contact information is here. Myself, Bill Sarbuck, I'm the Supervisor of all grants within the Office of Apprenticeship. My contact information is here, and then any general inquiries that you have can be directed to apprenticeshipunit@dol.nj.gov. That also comes to me, so you don't have to email me separately to that email address. That email address will send it to everybody in our unit. So we all get it at the same time and we can get back to you with an answer as soon as possible. So now I'd like to switch over to the questions to provide you guys with any answers to your questions. I'm going to open the chat and just see if anything is in there. Okay, so nobody entered any questions into the chat. So if you'd like to enter a question into the chat, please feel free to. Yes, I can go back to the contact slide. Let me 1 second. That's the contact slide. We will provide you, Layla, just so you know, we'll provide you with the slideshow, so you'll get that email ad, and we'll also email you the apprenticeshipunit@dol.nj.gov email address. This money is for seed funding or established programs seeking to place new apprentices eligible for funding. Yes, Tyler, that is absolutely allowable. We consider ourselves seed funding because ultimately the expectation is that if our funding didn't exist, you'd be capable of continuing the program without our funding. But ultimately, it doesn't restrict you from being eligible if you've had programs in the past and you are looking to place new apprentices. Is there a maximum award per organization? This is Ashley asked this question. So the maximum award amount is how much you think you realistically can place, and times $12,000, which is the maximum allowable that we have on our participants. We also have a $6 million $6 million available. Do I suggest to you that you apply for all 6 million of it? No, I don't think that that's a realistic expectation. Ultimately that's 6 million across the state for all applicants. So the likelihood of you being able to place all of those participants and to meet the $6 million obligation is probably pretty small. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide what your organization is capable of, and you can ask for up to that 6 million. Do you anticipate this funding every fiscal year? So, Gabrielle, this funding has existed here in New Jersey within the Office of Apprenticeship since FY 2019, which goes back to July of 2018. We've been doing anywhere from 1 to 2 rounds of this funding since then. I think we only have one fiscal year, FY20, during COVID, that we ended up not funding just because there was some concerns about funding availability, but ultimately it's been in existence since then. Now, I will say that there is the expectation that you never know whether or not funding will exist going into the future, but in this administration, I would anticipate there being at least one round of gains, at least for the next year or two. Uh, Let's see. Are there any requirements for round one awardees applying to this round as well, such as serving a different sector than in round one? So the requirements are that you're serving additional participants. The good thing about gains is that they're not a gains participant until they actually receive employment and are registered as a registered apprentice. So you can serve the same occupation if you wanted to with gains if you were a round one recipient, but you'd have to show proof that you're capable of placing those additional registered apprentices. So there is no restriction from asking for funding to serve the same population for the same industry. I would say though it could possibly make your application less successful if you weren't looking in a different industry or a different sector, because it could we could ask why didn't you just ask for the additional funds in round one? Why do you need it in round two? You just want to make sure you're clear with all of that information. Our training center works with contractors to place apprentices. Does the contractor need to apply, or is an application submitted to us able to incorporate OJT support that will eventually make its way to the employer? This is Tyler. So Tyler, I'm guessing in this situation, you're saying your organization would be an intermediary, because ultimately we fund the sponsor. So you would have to be either the intermediary or an employer. You have to get your program approved with USDOL if it's not already approved. If it is, then you would add these employers, these contractors to your approved registered apprenticeship program. There is some paperwork that needs to get signed by them because they're responsible for the on-the-job training aspect of the hours that are attached to your registered apprenticeship program. Yes, we can still do OJT support for those participants. We would check whether or not those employers have liabilities with the state of New Jersey, and if they did, they would have to take care of those liabilities before they're eligible for on-the-job training dollars. But yes, you can. Ultimately, we would reimburse you, and you would reimburse the employer for any on-the-job training dollars that were expended. Layla's asking, do you have any advice on the application? For example, what type of applications stand out? Layla, the best applications stand out. At the end of the day, uh, the best applications are those that have had connections, are already working with, or have an approved program with USDOL. Getting that program approved through USDOL is step one in your process, and that's something that you need to show either it has occurred or that you're working through the process of getting that approval with USDOL as soon as possible. I think that is my best advice, is get that process started and get things moving, and make sure that your applications include all the details and requirements that are within the notice of grant opportunity. Make sure you read that notice of grant opportunity. A lot of people think that just being at this technical assistance workshop, they get plenty of information. They don't need to read that 23-page document. I promise you there's information we didn't provide during this presentation. There always is. There's always going to be something that you need to make sure that you include, and you don't want to leave that out because that could be the thing that pulls your grade down. So just some bits and pieces of advice that could hopefully help you with your application. Patrick says technical training is a big part of our program. Do apprentices training in this portion of our program need to be employed at the time of training at $17 per hour? Yes, so you cannot be a participant within Gains, therefore you can't request funding from any Gains participants until they are employed and receiving minimally $17 per hour. That's the way the registered apprenticeship programs kind of work. They are in technical training and employed simultaneously and receiving both the classroom instruction and the on-the-job training instruction at the same time. Is it allowable to apply as a lead applicant and partner on an application through another agency if they are focused on different industries? So if you are not able to apply and work under somebody else's sponsorship for an apprenticeship program under Gains, there are other programs such as PACE, which is a pre-apprenticeship program where you can do such things, but within the Gains application, you have to be the sponsor agency in order to be the applicant and the recipient of funds. And by that, that basically means you're the organization responsible for the registered apprenticeship program with USDOL. Okay. Are OJT dollars included in the $12,000 per apprentice, or are they separate? They are included. So it's $12,000 maximum all in for the participants. That's why we said if you know you're going to serve 10 people, the maximum amount that you're able to ask for is 120,000. That's including everything. That's all my questions so far. Does anybody want to unmute themselves and ask a question just because it's easier, and or for some reason the chat's not working for you? Because I know that happens on occasion.
Hi, Bill.
Yes.
I'm sorry. When you're applying for the PACE grants you were talking about, it's a separate application. I understand. I'm sorry. I have to take this phone call.
Laura. Okay,
I guess
if you can mute yourself again and then you can come back on when you're done with your phone call, that's fine. Laura has asked, what was the other program for apprenticeship that you just mentioned? It's our PACE grant, our pre-apprenticeship and non-traditional I'm sorry, our pre-apprenticeship and career education. Too many acronyms. Apologize, everybody. Pre-apprenticeship program is preparing them for entry into a registered apprenticeship program, and you would partner with sponsor agencies in order to place them in those grants. We do have technical assistance workshops scheduled for the PACE grant. If you're interested, take a look on our website where you found this opportunity, and they will you'll find the notice of grant opportunity, and you can find the link to those TA sessions to ask additional questions about the PACE grant. Thank you, Al. Al actually just put in a link in the chat to our website where you can find all of the grants that are offered through the New Jersey Department of Labor. And you'll find a link to the pre-apprenticeship and career education, as well as any other grants that are available with the department there. Anybody else? Any other questions? Anybody want to unmute themselves? I know we have one person that I'm waiting to join back on after her call.
I have a question.
Sure.
So this program, the Gains program, is if I am an employer, I need to create the program in which an apprentice would be hired under my company, and we would put them through classroom training and on-the-job training. But I would create the curriculum, correct?
Correct. Along with USDOL, what they use is a database that basically has collected industry requirements for the occupations in which you're trying to train these individuals in. So along with them, you would create this program, and it would basically mold the needs that a participant would have in order to be a qualified candidate for your occupation. But yes, you would work with USDOL to get that created. You would do it along with them. It's not just them telling you what to do. You can add things to it and adjust it as needed, as long as it meets the requirements of industry as a whole. And by industry as a whole, I mean your industry, the occupation in which you're training for.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All
Eddie
right.
says we are already registered with NJDOL as a recognized apprenticeship program. Well, Eddie, I'm not sure that you are, because New Jersey Department of Labor does not approve apprenticeship programs. U.S. Department of Labor approves registered apprenticeship programs. So just know that you might want to check into that. This is our first time looking into grants.
Sorry, that's a typo. USDOL.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure, because there's a lot of, believe me, I promise you, there's so much confusion about registered apprenticeship because it's not as clear as some other ways of doing business. So you're already registered with USDOL. This is our first time looking. Should my very first step to be register with NJ Start, get the tax clearance certificate, and send a letter of intent? Yes, those should be your very first steps. And then once you get approval, then we'll give you the user guide. But I would also say, while you're doing those things, make sure you read that notice of grant opportunity. Get yourself clear on exactly what it is that's going to be required of you to submit, and make sure you're preparing anything that you can get prepared, because some of those documents are uploads and you can prepare them even before we give you access to the application.
Yeah, I've read that 23-page document twice already, and I probably need to read it 3 more times at least.
Well, once you get to the specific sections, you just got to go back and look at the NGO for those sections. You don't have to reread all 23. Some of it is repetitive information. It's a government issued document, so there's a lot in there that is there just for the purposes of making sure we're meeting the requirements of what a notice of grant opportunity is. But at the end of the day, you already know you're an eligible entity. You don't need to read those sections again. Really just go back and check the sections that are specific to the application pages,
Gotcha.
and that
Thank you.
should help. No problem.
Hi, Bill. Sorry.
Yes, no
I'm
problem.
off my phone call. Sorry, I had to take that phone call. With the gains, they have to start working immediately, or there's that time,
Right.
is there a time period for training?
No, not in Gaines. Gaines is, so the
Immediate.
expectation of Gaines is that they are employed from day one
All right.
and receiving and considered and approved and registered with USDOL as a registered apprentice. And they would be receiving that classroom instruction along with that on the job training while they're employed.
Now, what if the candidates aren't working out and they're not really willing to be trained and they're not really participating in the program? How does that work? Can you remove them and bring new
Sure.
people in?
Yep, you can remove them. I would say to you, though, for a registered apprenticeship program, and this is good advice for anybody, you want to make sure that you're vetting those candidates that you're accepting a little more than you may in a different situation, mainly because as the employer, there's a level of investment that you're making in this population of participants that you wouldn't be making in some other programs. As the gentleman was just saying before, I think, actually, I can't remember, but they had mentioned, that they do technical training first and then they place individuals. Well, that's a normal capacity, and that in that capacity, if they don't work out, well, you didn't invest anything as the employer, so you didn't lose anything in the long run. So you want to make sure you're vetting those participants up front and make sure that they're going to be a good fit for the program, not necessarily just for the job, because the job is the long-term goal, that we want to make sure that they accept the position and help the business grow. But at the same time, you also want to make sure they're going to be able to complete the program in a registered apprenticeship model, because there is an investment that you're making as an employer, and we wouldn't want you to lose that investment.
No, that's good. Are there currently any PACE grants right now?
Yes, you were on your phone call, so you probably didn't hear me, but Al posted a link within the chat where you can find the PACE grant opportunity. We have technical assistance workshops scheduled for that you can register to attend and ask additional questions about PACE during that.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Karen Nicholson, would you mind repeating your response to Kyna's question? Is it allowable to apply as a lead applicant and partner on an application through another agency if they are focusing on different industries? So We only fund grants to the sponsor agency is what I said to kind of, so if you're not sponsoring the program with USDOL, then the other agency would apply and partner with you. You wouldn't apply and partner with them. Does that make sense? Hopefully. We like to fund to the sponsor because the sponsor is the agency that's working directly with USDOL. Imagine how difficult it is if we have to work with somebody who's got to then work with somebody else to get contact with USDOL in order to get things accomplished. It doesn't work, I promise you. It makes it messy and it doesn't ultimately equate to a program that's going to be successful. So we grant with the sponsor agencies. Any other questions? No problem. Anybody else want to unmute and ask their question? Okay,
I
so
have a
with,
question.
go ahead.
I have another question. So if we're moving into another area of business and I, as an employer and additional employees need training in this area, can we be an apprentice also?
Can you be an apprentice as the employees for the business? Is that what you're asking?
As an employer, moving into a different, adding additional services, that there's training required.
I'm going to try and answer your question to the best of my ability, but Laura, you're skipping in and out, so it's hard to hear your question. It might be easier for you to type
Got it. Okay.
up a registered apprenticeship program with USDOL for anything that your business needs are. So if you're an employer and you're looking to increase what your business is going to provide, by that, then you want to create a registered apprenticeship program so that you can hire people in that area of in that occupation. You can absolutely work with USDOL to get that program approved and apply for our gains grant to do that. So I mean, if I hope that answers your question, but I'll wait and see and make sure when you enter it into the chat. Nick asks, our starting pay due to our collective bargaining agreement is less than $17. However, the apprentices receive major medical, vision, dental, pension, and annuity at no cost to the apprentices. Essentially a starting package of over $40 an hour. Would our program still qualify? Nick, I'm not telling you that you can't apply. We do have some situations where we have in the past been able to approve them at a little under what the requirements are, but minimum wage in New Jersey is over $15 an hour right now. And the goal of our grant is to ensure that our recipients are not are receiving skill and have some level of uh, skill to meet the needs of your business. So I'm not saying that you can't apply. You want to make sure that you provide all the details and specifics on what it is that's causing your application to be less than $17 per hour as far as the participants and how close it is. And ultimately that will decipher whether or not it's something that will be accepted or not. There is no restriction from applying if you are less than $17 an hour, but it's something that you would have to provide like kind of reasonable reasoning for why you wouldn't be at the $17 per hour and why that should still not disqualify your organization from being eligible. You'd provide that within your application though. As an employer looking to increase services that we provide to customers, can I, as the employer, receive funding as an apprentice? So no, we don't. I mean, we do allow for incumbent workers, but we don't fund. What you're talking about is more like a customized training grant. Laura, is it Laura? I'm sorry. Yeah, Laura, customized training grant, or what we call upskilling, which is basically upskilling the staff that already currently works there, providing them with the training in order to, kind of enhance your abilities to do the job. That's not necessarily what we would have. Um, can you create a new entity to apply for the gains grant for these different services?
So can I explain a little bit?
Sure. Hopefully I can hear you because for some reason it's very jumpy.
Can you hear me now?
I hear like 5 words in a row, and then it jumps, and then I miss a word, and then I hear 5 more words in a row. So that's where I was going. Is it's just hard to go ahead.
Okay. So I have a real estate brokerage and we have a construction business. But there are new regulations within the housing industry that there will need to be lead inspections provided when rentals turn over. So we were going to either license our current company or start a new company to provide those inspections. We're already in the industry, but I'm not sure how to move into that. And for that, I need additional training as the employer and need to add other employees.
Yeah, I would say, Laura, why don't we pull this off? And you can email apprenticeshipUnit@dol.nj.gov with this question, mainly because this is very, very specific to your situation and not going to necessarily help any of the others with their applications. So I don't want to hold everybody up to answer your question, but at the end of the day, what you're talking about really doesn't fit into a registered apprenticeship model necessarily, but it could fit into some other grant opportunities, and we can talk to you about those offline. Uh, Thanks, Laura. Sorry, I don't mean to push you off. I just don't want to hold everybody up, and I don't think the answer is simple to give to you. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay, so next steps for everybody, if you are still here and still interested in the application, will be to get those letter of intent submitted to us, get the registrations completed. As Eddie said, reach out to um, Division of Taxation, get those tax clearance certificates in place, work with NJ Start to make sure you have an active vendor ID for the future. And then, once you get your emails from us, and we provide you with the user guide, you'll start completing the application in our IGX database. Those are our next steps. What you'll be looking out for in the next couple of days here from us, whether it be a day or two, is a copy of this PowerPoint. We'll give you the contact information for USDOL. We'll give you the notice of grant opportunity, a frequently asked questions document, as well as information within that to link in order to be able to access this presentation. Other than that, if you guys need anything, you can always reach out to us at the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov email address on your screen. And otherwise, thank you all for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing your applications here in the near future.